Park Ji-won pressed his hand against the cool window of his quarters, staring out at the endless stars beyond. 3 months ago, he had been working on a small farm outside Seoul, growing rice and vegetables like his father and grandfather before him. Now he was living on a space station called Threshold, floating between worlds he had only dreamed about as a child. The station was huge, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. It spun slowly in space, creating artificial gravity that made walking feel almost normal. Ji-won's quarters were small but comfortable. A bed, a desk, a tiny bathroom, and that beautiful window showing the universe outside. He was here as an agricultural specialist, brought in to help establish food-growing systems that both humans and aliens could use. The aliens. Even thinking the word made Ji-won's heart beat faster. They were called the Velkrin, and they were nothing like humans. They stood taller, with bodies that seemed to be made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. Their faces were beautiful and strange at the same time, with large eyes that shifted colors based on their emotions. They had come to Threshold to talk about peace after decades of small conflicts and misunderstandings between their empire and human space. Ji-won had seen them from a distance, moving through the corridors with their guards and advisors. He had never spoken to one. He was just a farmer after all. The important people, the diplomats and military officers, they were the ones who dealt with aliens. Ji-won just tended to his plants in the hydroponics bay and tried to stay out of everyone's way. Today had been different, though. Today, the Velkrin Queen herself had arrived. Ji-won had been in the hydroponics bay when the announcement came through the station's speakers. Queen Sariel was boarding with her court. All personnel were to remain in their designated areas. He had peeked out from behind a row of tomato plants and watched through the bay windows as an enormous ship docked with the station. It was beautiful, covered in the same crystalline material as the Velkrin themselves, glowing with inner light. Hours later, the station was still buzzing with nervous energy. Ji-won had returned to his quarters after finishing his work. He had eaten a simple dinner of rice and vegetables, showered, and changed into comfortable clothes. Now he stood at the window, too excited to sleep, watching the stars and the Queen's ship docked nearby. A chime sounded at his door. Ji-won turned, surprised. He rarely had visitors. "Come in," he called out. The door slid open, revealing Lieutenant Choi Subin, one of the human security officers. She looked tired, her uniform slightly wrinkled. "Park Ji-won?" she asked, though she clearly knew who he was. "Yes, that's me," Ji-won replied, suddenly nervous. "Is something wrong? I need to ask you a few questions." "May I come in?" Ji-won nodded, stepping back. Subin entered and the door closed behind her. She looked around his small quarters, her eyes scanning everything with professional efficiency. "Where have you been for the last 4 hours?" she asked. "In the hydroponics bay until about 2 hours ago. Then I came here. I haven't left since." Ji-won's mouth felt dry. "What's this about?" Subin studied his face for a long moment. "The Velkrin Queen's daughters are missing." The words hit Ji-won like a physical blow. "Missing? How, when?" "About an hour ago. They were in the royal suite with their caretakers. The Queen stepped away for a meeting with our ambassadors. When she returned, her daughters were gone." Subin pulled out a small tablet. "The entire station is on lockdown. We're questioning everyone, checking all the security footage." "I don't understand," Ji-won said. "Why would you think I know anything? I've never even been near the royal suite. I don't even know what level it's on." "We're questioning all humans on the station," Subin explained. "The Velkrin are upset. They think someone took the princesses. We need to show we're taking this seriously." Ji-won sat down on his bed, suddenly feeling weak. "I've been here the whole time. I was working with the plants, then I came back here. I haven't seen any Velkrin children." "What do they look like?" Ji-won asked suddenly. "The princesses, I mean." Subin hesitated. "They're young. In their larval stage, the Velkrin call it. Small, about the size of house cats. They glow like their mother, but softer, paler. One glows more blue, the other more violet." Ji-won tried to imagine it. "And they just disappeared?" "The suite is secure. The best technology both our species have. Nothing should be able to get in or out without triggering alarms. But somehow they got out." Subin's expression was grim. "The Queen is threatening to call off the peace talks. Some of her advisors are saying this is an attack, that humans kidnapped her children." "That's crazy," Ji-won protested. "Why would anyone do that?" "I don't know. But right now everyone is a suspect until we find those princesses. Subin stood up. I need you to stay in your quarters until we sort this out. Don't leave for any reason. If you need something, call security first. Am I under arrest? No, but the Velcrin guards are on edge. It's safer if everyone stays put. Subin moved to the door, then paused. You really haven't seen anything unusual? Anyone acting strange? Jiwon shook his head. I'm sorry. I wish I could help. After Subin left, Jiwon sat on his bed, his mind racing. Somewhere on this station, 2 alien children were lost and scared. Their mother, a queen of a vast empire, was probably terrified. And everyone was looking at humans as if they were responsible. He thought about his own mother back on Earth. How she had cried when he left for this assignment. How she had made him promise to be careful, to come home safe. What would it be like to lose a child in a place like this, surrounded by strangers and potential enemies? The station's lighting began to dim, signaling the start of the night cycle. Jiwon lay back on his bed, still fully clothed. He doubted he would sleep, but he was exhausted from the long day. His small room felt even smaller now, like a cell. Outside his window, the stars continued their eternal dance, uncaring about the drama unfolding inside the metal walls of Threshold. The Queen's ship glowed brighter than before, pulsing with urgent light. Jiwon could imagine the chaos inside, the searching, the accusations, the fear. He closed his eyes, hoping that somehow, somewhere, those lost princesses were safe. Morning would come soon enough, and with it, hopefully, some answers. The peace talks, the future between humans and Velcrin, everything now depended on finding 2 small, glowing children in the vast maze of the station. Jiwon's heart beat steadily in his chest as he drifted toward an uneasy sleep. Unaware that the answers everyone sought were closer than anyone could possibly imagine. The harsh sound of the station alarm pulled Jiwon from his restless sleep. His eyes snapped open, heart pounding, confused about where he was for a moment. Then memory flooded back. The missing princesses, the lockdown. He sat up quickly, rubbing his face with both hands. The alarm cut off, replaced by a voice over the speakers. All personnel remain in quarters. Security teams continue search pattern Delta. Report any unusual findings immediately. Jiwon stood and stretched, his back aching from falling asleep in his clothes. He checked the time on his wall display. He had been asleep for maybe 3 hours. It was still technically night cycle on the station, but clearly no one was resting. Through his window, he could see small security shuttles moving around the exterior of the station, their lights sweeping across the hull. His stomach growled. He had been too nervous to eat much dinner. Now trapped in his quarters, he realized he was hungry. Jiwon moved to his small food storage unit and pulled out a protein bar. It tasted like cardboard, but it would do. As he ate, he heard footsteps in the corridor outside. Lots of them. Running. Shouting in both human languages and the musical chiming sound of Velcrin's speech. The search was still going on, growing more desperate with each passing hour. Jiwon moved back to his window, staring out at the Queen's ship. He wondered what she was doing right now. Was she searching too? Or was she sitting somewhere waiting, hoping for news about her children? He couldn't imagine the pain she must be feeling. The corridor outside grew quiet again. Jiwon yawned, still tired despite his nap. He decided to try to sleep properly. He pulled off his shirt and pants, changing into sleep clothes. The station's temperature control kept everything comfortable, but he liked having his thin blanket to pull over himself. Jiwon approached his bed and stopped. There was something on his chest. No, 2 somethings. Small, curled together, glowing softly in the dim light of his quarters. His breath caught in his throat. For a moment he couldn't move, couldn't think. Then his brain finally processed what he was seeing. The princesses. The missing Velcrin princesses were sleeping on his bed, curled up together right where his chest would be if he lay down. They were beautiful. Tiny things, their bodies made of the same crystal material as adult Velcrin, but somehow softer, more delicate. One glowed with a gentle blue light, the other with pale violet. They were pressed close together, and even from where he stood, Jiwon could hear a sound coming from them. A soft rhythmic humming, almost like purring. Jiwon's hand moved slowly to his communication device on the desk. He picked it up carefully, never taking his eyes off the princesses. They didn't move. They seemed to be deeply asleep. His fingers trembled as he activated the device. "Security," he whispered. "This is Park Jiwon in quarters B247. I need someone to come here immediately." "I found them." "Found who?" The voice on the other end asked. The princesses. They're in my quarters. There was a moment of stunned silence, then chaos. Don't move. Stay exactly where you are. We're sending a team right now. I'm not moving, Jiwan promised. But please hurry. And please tell them not to scare these children. They're sleeping. Jiwan stood frozen by his desk, still holding the communicator. His mind raced with questions. How did they get in here? Why were they on his bed? Had they been here the whole time he was sleeping? The thought made him shiver. He had been lying right next to them and never knew. Less than 2 minutes later, his door burst open. Lieutenant Choi Subin rushed in, followed by 4 other human security officers. They all stopped short when they saw the small glowing forms on Jiwon's bed. By all the stars, Subin breathed. There they are. I don't understand, Jiwon said quietly. I was about to go to sleep and I found them there. Subin moved closer slowly, carefully. They look unharmed, peaceful even. She activated her own communicator. This is Subin. I've confirmed the princess's location. They appear to be safe and sleeping. Quarters B247. Inform the Queen and Ambassador Kang immediately. The response was immediate and loud enough for everyone to hear. The Queen is on her way. Velcrin guards are coming. Eat at 2 minutes, Subin turned to her team. Spread out. Hands visible at all times. When the Velcrin arrive, no sudden movements. We don't want anyone thinking we're threatening those children. The security officers moved to the walls of the small room, trying to make themselves look non-threatening. Jiwan stayed by his desk, still not daring to move closer to the bed. Did you take them? Subin asked him directly, her voice low. No, I swear I've been here the whole time. I went to sleep and they weren't there. I woke up and suddenly they were. I don't know how they got in. The door logs show no entry except me earlier and my team just now, Subin said, checking her tablet. The ventilation system is too small for them to crawl through. The walls are solid metal. There's no way they could have gotten in here. But they did, Jiwan pointed out unnecessarily. The sound of more footsteps, heavier and faster, echoed down the corridor. Then the door filled with Velcrin guards, their crystalline bodies gleaming with bright, aggressive light. Their eyes were fixed on the bed where the princesses slept. Behind them came more figures. Jiwan recognized Ambassador Kang Minho, the lead human diplomat, looking exhausted and terrified. And then, filling the doorway with her presence, came Queen Sariel herself. She was magnificent and terrifying. Tall, glowing with intense white light that made everyone squint. Her face was angular and sharp, her eyes swirling with colors that shifted too fast to name. She saw her daughters immediately and made a sound that Jiwan felt in his bones. A cry of relief and fear and love all mixed together. Stop, one of her guards commanded in accented human speech. It could be trap. The Queen ignored him. She moved into the small room and everyone pressed back against the walls to give her space. She approached the bed slowly, and as she got closer, her light softened. By the time she reached her daughters, she was glowing as gently as they were. Hana, she whispered, touching the blue princess. Mireille, her hand moved to the violet one. My lights, my stars. The princesses stirred slightly at their mother's touch but didn't wake. They shifted, pressing closer together, their soft, purring sound continuing. Queen Sariel turned to look at Jiwan. Her eyes locked onto his, and he felt like she was looking into his soul. You human, what did you do to my daughters? Nothing, Your Majesty, Jiwan said, his voice shaking. I swear, I don't know how they got here. I found them just before I called security. They look drugged, one of the Velcrin guards said. Some human chemical keeping them asleep. No, the Queen said firmly. Look at their color, their light. They are not drugged. They are, she paused, her head tilting. They are content, deeply content. I have not seen them rest this peacefully since their father died. She looked back at Jiwan. Come here, human. Closer. Jiwan's legs felt like water, but he forced himself to move. He approached the bed slowly, stopping a few feet away. The Queen watched him with those shifting, color-changing eyes. Your name? Park Jiwan, Your Majesty. Park Jiwan, she repeated as if tasting the words. You swear you did not take my daughters? I swear on everything I love. I would never hurt children. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, she reached out and placed her hand over his chest. Jiwan gasped. Her hand was warm, not cold like he expected. She held it there for several seconds and her eyes widened. Impossible, she breathed. She turned to her guards. Bring Velshar now and wake Dr. Yoon from the human medical bay. I need answers and I need them immediately. She looked back at Jiwon, her hand still on his chest, feeling his heartbeat. You, Park Jiwon, may have just changed everything between our peoples. But first, we need to understand how and why. The Queen's daughters continued to sleep peacefully on Jiwon's bed, glowing softly in the crowded quarters, while outside, the first light of the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the stars. Jiwon's quarters had never been designed to hold this many people. Bodies pressed against walls in the doorway, spilling out into the corridor. Velcrin guards stood like statues, their eyes never leaving the sleeping princesses. Human security officers watched the Velcrin guards just as carefully. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. Queen Sariel had not moved from beside the bed. She kept one hand hovering over her daughters, not quite touching them, as if afraid that contact might break whatever spell held them in such peaceful sleep. With her other hand, she had gestured for Jiwon to sit in his desk chair. He sat stiffly, very aware that he was wearing only his sleep clothes in front of royalty and half the station's personnel. Forgive the chaos, Ambassador Kang said quietly to the Queen. We'll have answers soon. The Queen said nothing. She simply watched her daughters, her light pulsing slowly with her breathing. More footsteps approached. The crowd parted and two new figures entered. The first was an elderly Velcrin, his crystalline body clouded with age but his eyes bright and sharp. He wore robes marked with symbols Jiwon didn't recognize. The second was a human woman in a medical uniform, her hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, clearly having been woken from sleep. Your Majesty, the elderly Velcrin said, bowing deeply. I came as quickly as I could. You summoned me, Velshar? Yes, Queen Sariel replied. Look at them, old friend. Look at my daughters and tell me what you see. Velshar approached the bed carefully. He studied the sleeping princesses for a long moment, then looked at Jiwon, then back at the children. His eyes widened with understanding. Heart warmth, he said simply. The room erupted in whispers. The Queen raised her hand and silence fell immediately. Explain, she commanded. For the humans who do not know our ways. Velshar nodded. Dr. Yoondahi, yes? You are the human xenobiologist? The human woman nodded. I am, though I was brought here to study plant adaptation, not Velcrin children. Then you will learn something new today, Velshar said. His voice was kind despite his formal words. Young Velcrin in their larval stage are drawn to what we call heart warmth. It is not temperature, it is a vibration, a frequency produced by a beating heart. In our species, parents and close family produce this frequency strongly. It comforts the young. It tells them they are safe, protected, loved. Dr. Yoon pulled out a tablet, already taking notes. A vibrational frequency? Can you be more specific? I can, Velshar said. It ranges between 45 and 75 beats per minute, with specific harmonic patterns that accompany each beat. Most adult Velcrin produce adequate heart warmth. Some produce it very strongly and become natural caretakers and teachers. But what does this have to do with my daughters being here? The Queen asked. This human is not Velcrin. How could he produce heart warmth? Velshar turned to Jiwon. May I? He asked, gesturing to Jiwon's chest. Jiwon nodded, confused. Velshar placed his hand over Jiwon's heart, just as the Queen had done earlier. The elderly Velcrin's eyes closed. Several seconds passed. Then his eyes opened again, filled with wonder. Remarkable, he breathed. This human produces heart warmth. Strong heart warmth, stronger than I have felt in many years, perhaps stronger than anyone currently alive in our species. That's impossible. One of the Velcrin guards said. Humans are aliens. They cannot produce our heart warmth. And yet, Velshar said, he does. The evidence sleeps peacefully before us. Dr. Yoon stepped forward. May I examine you? She asked Jiwon. This is fascinating. If humans naturally produce this frequency, it could explain so much about why some species find us comforting to be around. I guess so, Jiwon said weakly. He felt like he was in a dream. But I don't understand. I'm just normal. There's nothing special about me. Dr. Yoon pulled out a medical scanner and ran it over his chest. She frowned at the readings. Your heart rate is slightly irregular. Do you know about this? Yes, Jiwon admitted. Since I was born. The doctor said it's not dangerous. It just beats a little differently than most people's. Sometimes it skips or adds an extra beat. I've lived with it my whole life. May I see those readings? Velshar asked. Dr. Yoon showed him her tablet. The elderly Velkrin's expression shifted to amazement. The pattern. Look at the pattern of his heartbeat. It is almost identical to the strongest heart warmth producers in our species. The small irregularities create harmonics, additional frequencies that amplify the basic vibration. So his heart condition, Dr. Yoon said slowly, makes him produce this heart warmth even more strongly than a typical human might? Precisely, Velshar confirmed. And your species naturally beats within the range that comforts young Velkrin. You simply do not know it because you have never been around our children before. Queen Serial looked at Jiwon with new eyes. So my daughter sensed this? Even from the royal suite? The royal suite is 12 levels above us, Lieutenant Subin said, checking her tablet. How could they sense anything from that distance? Young Velkrin in the larval stage can sense heart warmth through walls, through distance, Velshar explained. It is a survival instinct. In the ancient times, before we built cities, young ones would wander from their family groups. Heart warmth would guide them back. The stronger the signal, the further they can sense it. They were looking for me? Jiwon asked, stunned. But they don't even know me. They know your heart, the queen said softly. That is enough for one so young. She looked at her daughters again, and for the first time since entering the room, she smiled. They have not slept like this since their father passed. He had very strong heart warmth. It was one of the reasons I chose him as my mate. When he died, they became restless, difficult to comfort. No one at court could calm them the way he did. I'm so sorry for your loss, Jiwon said quietly. The queen inclined her head in acknowledgement. They have been searching, I think. Searching for that feeling of safety again. And they found it in the most unexpected place. In the heart of a human farmer. Ambassador Kang stepped forward carefully. Your Majesty, if I may. This discovery, what it means for our peoples. I know what you will say, the queen interrupted. That this is an opportunity. That my daughter's attraction to a human shows our species can coexist, can connect in ways we never imagined. Yes, Kang admitted. The peace talks could benefit from this understanding. The queen was silent for a moment. Then she looked at Jiwon again. What do you want, Park Jiwon? You hold my daughter's happiness in your strange, warm human heart. What would you ask in return? Jiwon blinked in surprise. Nothing, Your Majesty. I don't want anything. I just want to help if I can. I know what it's like to miss someone. My father died when I was young. I remember wishing I could feel safe again. Something shifted in the queen's expression, a softening. You understand loss? Yes. Then perhaps you understand why I must ask something difficult of you. The queen straightened, and despite her gentle tone, she was suddenly every inch the powerful ruler. Would you be willing to spend time with my daughters? To let them stay near you so they can feel this heart warmth? I do not know how long they will need it. Days, perhaps weeks. But it would give them peace. It would let them heal from their grief. Jiwon looked at the sleeping princesses. They were so small, so peaceful. I'm not a parent. I don't know how to care for children, especially alien children. You would not be alone, the queen assured him. Caretakers would help you. Guards would protect you all. You would simply need to be near them to let them hear your heartbeat. What if I hurt them by accident? What if I do something wrong? Velshar spoke up. Young Velkrin are resilient. They are drawn to heart warmth, but they also learn from those who produce it. You would not harm them. You are not capable of it. If you were, they would not have sought you out. Jiwon looked around the crowded room. Human faces and Velkrin faces all watched him, waiting. The fate of peace talks, the future of two species seemed to rest on his answer. But when he looked back at the princesses, all of that faded away. He just saw two children who needed comfort. Okay, he said. I'll do it. I'll help them however I can. The queen's light brightened, warm and golden. Then we shall begin a new chapter, Park Jiwon. One written by an unlikely friend to my daughters. History will remember this moment. I don't care about history, Jiwon said honestly. I just want them to be okay. The queen smiled, truly smiled. That, she said, is exactly why you are the right one for this task. 3 days had passed since the discovery, and Jiwon's life had transformed completely. His small quarters were no longer just his. They had been expanded, the room next door converted into a space for the princesses. A door now connected the two rooms, always left open so Hana and Mirai could come and go as they pleased. And come they did. constantly. Jiwan woke each morning to find at least one of them curled up on his chest. Sometimes both. They were light, barely weighing anything, but their presence was impossible to ignore. They glowed gently in the darkness, providing a soft nightlight. And they purred, that strange rhythmic humming that he had grown to find soothing. This morning it was Mirai, the violet-glowing princess. She was sprawled across his chest, one small crystalline hand resting over his heart. Jiwan carefully reached up and touched her head. She was smooth and warm like sun-heated glass. "Good morning," he whispered. Mirai stirred, her glow brightening. She lifted her head and looked at him with those large, color-shifting eyes. Then she made a sound, something between a chirp and a bell chiming. It seemed happy. "Your sister is in the other room?" Jiwan asked, though he knew Mirai couldn't understand his words. Not yet, anyway. Velshar had explained that young Velkrin learned language through prolonged exposure, absorbing words and meaning over time. As if summoned by his thought, Hana appeared in the doorway. The blue glowing princess was slightly smaller than her sister, but somehow seemed bolder. She approached the bed and climbed up without hesitation, settling herself next to Mirai. "Good morning to you too," Jiwan said with a smile. The door chime sounded. "Come in," Jiwan called. Li Hyejin entered carrying a tray of food. She was the human cultural liaison who had been assigned to help Jiwan adjust to his new responsibilities. She was young, enthusiastic, and seemed to find the whole situation endlessly fascinating. "Breakfast delivery," she announced cheerfully. "For you and your roommates." "They're not really roommates," Jiwan said, carefully sitting up. The princesses adjusted their positions, moving with him to stay close to his chest. "What would you call them then?" Hyejin asked, setting the tray on the desk. "You sleep together, eat together, spend every waking moment together. I'm their babysitter." "You're much more than that," a new voice said. Talus entered behind Hyejin. He was a young Velkrin diplomat, one of the few who seemed genuinely interested in building bridges with humans. His glow was a pale green, which Hyejin had explained meant he was calm and curious. "The princesses have bonded with you. In our culture, that is sacred." Jiwan still wasn't used to having so many visitors. "Would you both like to stay for breakfast?" "I have more than enough." They settled into the room, which had been furnished with chairs that could accommodate both human and Velkrin bodies. Jiwan managed to eat one-handed while Hana and Mirai remained pressed against him. Hyejin had brought food for the princesses too, a crystal-like substance that they nibbled slowly. "The queen wants to see you today," Talus said. "She wishes to observe how her daughters interact with you." "She's been watching the security footage," Hyejin added. "We all have. It's become quite the entertainment on the station." Jiwan felt his face heat with embarrassment. "People are watching me sleep?" "Not in a creepy way," Hyejin assured him quickly. "It's just nobody has seen anything like this before. A human and Velkrin children bonding naturally. It's historic. I'm not historic. I'm just a farmer who happens to have a weird heartbeat. A farmer who carries alien princesses around on his chest," Talus pointed out. "A farmer who has gotten further in 3 days toward peace between our species than diplomats have managed in 3 years. After breakfast, Jiwan prepared to go to the hydroponics bay. He had work to do, plants to tend. The princesses followed him as he got dressed, watching his every move with curious eyes. "Do they have to come with me?" Jiwan asked. "Can you bear to leave them behind?" Hyejin countered. Jiwan looked at Hana and Mirai. As if sensing his thoughts, they both moved closer, pressing against his legs. Their purring intensified. "I guess not," he admitted. The walk to the hydroponics bay was unlike any walk Jiwan had taken before. People stopped to stare. Both humans and Velkrin paused in the corridors to watch as he passed by with the 2 glowing princesses, trailing after him like ducklings. Hana and Mirai seemed unbothered by the attention. They stayed close to Jiwan, occasionally touching his legs or hands as if to reassure themselves he was still there. When they reached the hydroponics bay, Jiwan's supervisor, a woman named Kim Borum, was waiting. She stared at the princesses with wide eyes. "So it's true," she breathed. "You're really babysitting the queen's daughters." "I'm really trying to do my job," Jiwan corrected. "These are just, extra helpers," Borum laughed. "Well, let's see how good they are at hydroponics." To Jiwan's surprise, Hana and Mirai were fascinated by the plants. They followed him along the rows of vegetables, their heads tilting as they examined each species. When Jiwon knelt to check the roots of a tomato plant, both princesses crowded close to see what he was doing. "These are tomatoes," Jiwon explained, even though he knew they couldn't understand. "They're fruits, but humans use them like vegetables. They need lots of light and water." Mireille reached out and gently touched a leaf. Her glow shifted slightly, becoming tinged with green. Hana did the same, and her blue light also gained a green tint. "They're mimicking the plant," Borum observed, watching from a respectful distance. "I've read that young Velkrin do that. They copy the colors and patterns around them as a form of learning." Jiwon watched as the princesses explored the hydroponics bay. They were careful not to damage anything, their movements delicate and precise. When he moved to the next plant, they followed immediately, never letting him get more than a few feet away. Hours passed quickly. Jiwon worked and the princesses watched. Occasionally they would make sounds, those chiming chirps which Jiwon began to understand were questions or observations. He would answer them, describing what he was doing, even though he knew they couldn't fully comprehend his words yet. At lunch, they all sat together on the floor of the bay, surrounded by green growing things. Hijin had brought food again and Talus had joined them. The young Velkrin diplomat seemed pleased by what he was seeing. "This is good," Talus said. "Many Velkrin think humans are too rough, too loud, too different. But seeing you with the princesses being so gentle and patient, it changes perspectives." "I'm not trying to change anything," Jiwon said. "I'm just trying not to mess up." "That humility is part of why this works," Hyejin said. She was recording everything on her tablet for her cultural reports. "You don't treat them like political tools. You treat them like children who need care." After lunch, the queen herself appeared in the hydroponics bay. Her guards entered first, checking the space, then she swept in, her presence filling the entire room. Jiwon quickly stood and Hana and Mireille immediately rushed to their mother. Queen Sariel knelt and her daughters pressed against her, their lights mingling with hers. She held them close, making soft sounds in the Velkrin language. Then she looked up at Jiwon. "Thank you," she said simply. "They are happier than I have seen them in months." "They're wonderful," Jiwon replied honestly. "I enjoy spending time with them. I see they have been learning from you. Tell me, what have you taught them today?" "Just about plants. How they grow, what they need. Nothing important." "Everything is important," the queen corrected. "They learn not just facts, but values. Patience, care, respect for life. These are the lessons that matter most." She stood, and her daughters reluctantly moved back to Jiwon's side. "Continue as you have been. I will visit again soon." She paused, then added, "You are becoming part of their lives, Park Jiwon, and therefore part of mine. I hope you understand the honor and responsibility in that." "I'll do my best, Your Majesty." After she left, Jiwon sat back down among the plants and the princesses immediately climbed into his lap. He held them carefully, feeling their warmth, their gentle vibrations. "Well," Hyejin said softly, "I think you're doing more than just babysitting. You're building a bridge, one heartbeat at a time." Jiwon looked down at Hana and Mireille, who had closed their eyes contentedly. Outside the hydroponics bay, the station continued its complex dance of politics and diplomacy. But here, in this room full of growing things with two small alien children trusting him completely, Jiwon felt like maybe he was exactly where he needed to be. 2 weeks had passed since the discovery, and the peace talks were progressing better than anyone had dared hope. Jiwon had stopped paying attention to most of it. His world had shrunk to his quarters, the hydroponics bay, and the two glowing princesses who followed him everywhere. But not everyone was happy with the progress. Commander An Jisoo stood in her private office, looking out at the stars. She was a decorated military officer, a veteran of the border skirmishes with the Velkrin that had marked the past decade. She had lost friends to Velkrin weapons, and now somehow humans were supposed to trust them because two alien children liked sleeping on a farmer's chest. It made her sick. "You summoned me," a voice said behind her. The words were in Velkrin, but Jisoo's translator earpiece converted them instantly. She turned to face Krathzen, the Velkrin war master. He was older than most of his kind on the station, his crystalline body marked with fractures from old battles. His glow was a deep, angry red. "I did," Jisoo replied in English, letting the translator handle it. "We need to talk about what's happening here." "The disgrace?" Krathzen said bitterly. Our queen softened by her grief, allowing her daughters to bond with a human. Making peace with those who killed her mate. Jisu's eyebrows rose. I thought his death was an accident, a malfunction on his ship. So the official reports say, Krath Zen replied, but many of us have doubts. The timing was too convenient, just as he was pushing for stronger borders against human expansion. And now the Queen is doing the opposite, Jisu said thoughtfully. Opening borders, talking about trade agreements, cultural exchanges, all because her children found a human with a special heartbeat. It is manipulation, Krath Zen insisted. This human, this Park Ji-won, he was placed here deliberately. Someone knew about heart warmth. Someone planned this. Jisu had considered this. My intelligence officers have checked his background thoroughly. He's exactly what he appears to be, a farmer. No military training, no intelligence connections. He was assigned here because of his agricultural expertise, nothing more. Then the situation has been exploited by others, Krath Zen argued. The diplomats on both sides. They are using those children to push their peace agenda. They care nothing for tradition, for security, for the real threats our peoples face from each other. So what do you propose? Jisu asked carefully. She needed to know how far the Velkrin was willing to go. Krath Zen moved closer, lowering his voice even though they were alone. The peace talks must fail. Not violently. Not in a way that starts war. But they must fail. And how would we accomplish that? Doubt, Krath Zen said simply. We plant doubt about the human's intentions. About what he has really been doing with the princesses. We make people question whether this bond is natural or manufactured. Jisu felt a chill. You want to accuse him of harming the children? Not harming, influencing, drugging perhaps. Using some human technology to create false contentment in them. We have already seen that no one expected humans to produce heart warmth. What else might humans be capable of that we do not know? It was clever, Jisu had to admit. The princesses were so young, they couldn't testify to their own treatment. The only evidence was behavior, which could be interpreted many ways. If we do this, she said slowly, there can be no connection back to us. The accusation must come from somewhere else. Someone concerned for the children's welfare. I have loyal officers who will raise questions, Krath Zen said. If your people also express concerns, it will seem like a natural worry from both sides. Jisu thought about her fallen comrades, about the battles she had fought, about whether peace built on a foundation of alien children bonding with humans could ever be real or lasting. I'll need a few days to arrange things, she said finally. Krath Zen's glow shifted to orange, satisfied. Do not wait too long. The more attached those children become to the human, the harder it will be to separate them, and separation must happen for the good of both our peoples. After the Velkrin War Master left, Jisu sat at her desk and began composing carefully worded messages, concerns about security protocols, questions about medical monitoring of the princesses, suggestions that independent observers should verify their well-being. Nothing outright accusatory, but enough to plant seeds of doubt. Meanwhile, in the hydroponics bay, Ji-won was teaching Hana and Mirai about pollination. He had fashioned small brushes that the princesses could hold in their delicate hands, and they were carefully transferring pollen from one flower to another under his guidance. Gently, Ji-won encouraged. The flowers are fragile. Just a light touch. Mirai made a chirping sound and Ji-won recognized it as her way of asking a question. She was getting better at communicating, using different tones and pitches to convey meaning even without words. Why do we do this? Ji-won interpreted. Because in nature, bees and other insects would do it. But here on the station, there are no bees, so we have to help the plants reproduce. Hana touched one of the tomato flowers, then looked at Ji-won expectantly. He smiled. She was learning fast, understanding the connection between pollination and the fruits that would grow later. Lieutenant Choi Subin entered the bay, her expression troubled. Ji-won, can I talk to you for a moment? Sure, Ji-won said. He looked at the princesses. Keep practicing. I'll be right over there where you can see me. The princesses didn't like it when he moved out of touching distance, but they had learned that sometimes he needed to talk to other people. They continued their work, though both kept glancing at him frequently. What's wrong? Ji-won asked when he reached Subin. There are rumors starting to circulate, Subin said quietly. Questions about whether the princesses are really safe with you. Whether they might be under some kind of influence. Ji-won felt like he had been punched. That's insane. Anyone who has seen us together knows they're fine. They're happy. I know that. But not everyone has seen you together. Some people are only hearing third-hand reports, and some people on both sides don't want peace. They're starting to whisper that maybe the princesses are being drugged or conditioned somehow. The queen visits regularly. She would know if something was wrong. You and I know that. But rumors don't care about logic. Subin looked frustrated. I've been trying to trace where these stories are starting, but they're coming from multiple sources. Someone is orchestrating this. Before Ji-won could respond, an alarm sounded. Not the station emergency alarm, but something else. A security alert. Subin checked her tablet and her face went pale. Someone has filed a formal complaint with station security. They're calling for an investigation into your treatment of the princesses, and they want you separated from them immediately pending review. No, Ji-won said instantly. He looked at Hana and Mirai, still carefully pollinating the flowers, trusting him completely. That will hurt them. They don't understand why I would suddenly be gone. I know. I'm going to fight this. Ambassador Kang is already protesting. But Ji-won, this is coming from high up in both military structures. Whoever is behind this has power. The hydroponics bay doors opened again and Velcrin guards entered, followed by human security officers. Leading them was a Velcrin official Ji-won didn't recognize his glow-astern yellow. Park Ji-won, the official announced. You are hereby ordered to cease all contact with the royal princesses pending an investigation into allegations of improper influence and potential harm. The princesses looked up from their flowers, sensing the tension. Their glows dimmed with worry. You can't do this, Ji-won protested. Look at them. They're fine. They're happy. That is what will be determined by the investigation, the official said coldly. Remove yourself from their presence immediately. Hana and Mirai abandoned the flowers and rushed to Ji-won, pressing against his legs. Their purring had stopped, replaced by distressed chirping sounds. Sir, this is cruel, Subin argued. At least let him explain to them. They are too young to understand explanation, the Velcrin official said. Guards, escort Park Ji-won to detention quarters. The princesses will be returned to their mother. Two human security officers approached Ji-won reluctantly. He could see they didn't want to do this, but they were following orders. I'm sorry, one of them whispered. As they led Ji-won away, Hana and Mirai tried to follow. Velcrin guards gently blocked them, and the princess's distressed sounds became louder, more frantic. The last thing Ji-won heard as he was taken from the hydroponics bay was the sound of them crying out, their lights flashing erratically with panic. In her office, Commander Jisoo heard the reports of the successful separation. She told herself she felt nothing about the distressed alien children. This was necessary. This was right. But late that night, alone, she found herself wondering if she had just made a terrible mistake. The detention quarters were comfortable but sterile. A bed, a chair, a table, and a small bathroom. No windows, no plants. No glowing princesses curled on his chest. Ji-won had been there for 2 days, and each hour felt like an eternity. He was allowed no visitors except his appointed legal representative, a tired human lawyer named Park Seo-jun, who seemed overwhelmed by the political complexity of the case. Meals arrived through a slot in the door. The lights never fully dimmed. Ji-won barely slept. He kept thinking about Hana and Mirai. Were they okay? Were they frightened? Did they understand why he had suddenly disappeared from their lives? On the third day, Seo-jun arrived with news. The tribunal will convene tomorrow. They're bringing in Judge Han Sora from the Galactic Council to preside. She's supposed to be neutral, experienced with interspecies disputes. What exactly am I being accused of? Ji-won asked. He had asked this before, but the answers had been vague. Officially? Unauthorized interaction with alien royalty, possible use of undisclosed technology to influence behavior, and endangerment of protected individuals. Seo-jun sat down heavily. Unofficially? They're accusing you of everything short of kidnapping. This is insane. The Queen asked me to spend time with her daughters. She gave permission for everything. The Queen will testify to that. But there are officials on both sides claiming she was emotionally compromised by grief. They're arguing her judgment was impaired. Seo-jun pulled out his tablet. The prosecution is going to focus on how unusual it is that human biology could produce this heart warmth effect. They'll suggest you or someone else manipulated the situation. How could I manipulate my own heartbeat? They'll claim you used technology, or that you were part of a larger scheme. Seo-jun looked at him seriously. Ji-won, you need to understand. There are powerful people who don't want peace. They see you as a threat to their agenda. If they can discredit you, they can discredit the entire peace process. That night, Jiwon lay awake in the detention quarters, staring at the ceiling. He thought about his small farm back on Earth, about simple things like planting seeds and watching them grow. How had he ended up at the center of an interspecies political crisis? The next morning, guards escorted him to a large conference room that had been converted into a makeshift courtroom. Seats filled both sides of the room, humans on one side, Velcrin on the other. At the front, a raised platform held 3 seats. The center one was occupied by Judge Han Sora, a stern-looking woman in the blue robes of the Galactic Council. To her left sat a human magistrate. To her right, a Velcrin judicial elder. Jiwon was directed to a seat at a table facing the judges. Sojun sat beside him. Across the aisle, 2 prosecutors, 1 human and 1 Velcrin, prepared their materials. "This tribunal will come to order," Judge Han announced. Her voice carried authority. "We are here to determine the facts regarding Park Ji-won's interaction with the Velcrin princesses Hana and Mirai, and whether any improper conduct occurred. This is not a criminal trial but an inquiry. However, the findings will determine if criminal charges should be filed." The human prosecutor stood. "Your Honors, we will demonstrate that Park Ji-won, through means not yet fully understood, exercised improper influence over 2 young members of the Velcrin royal family. The unnaturalness of their attachment to him, combined with the convenient timing of their escape from the royal suite, suggests manipulation or planning." "Objection," Seojin said. "My client had no prior contact with the princesses. He had never even been near the royal suite. There is no evidence of planning." "Then how do you explain," the Velcrin prosecutor interjected, standing, "that these children who had been secure in their quarters for days suddenly overcame multiple security measures to reach his room specifically? They were drawn by heart warmth," Seojin argued. "Expert testimony will confirm this. Or they were summoned by some technology we have not detected," the Velcrin prosecutor countered. The arguments continued for hours. Medical experts testified about Ji-won's heart condition. Security experts explained the impossibility of the princess's escape and entry into his quarters. Cultural specialists discussed Velcrin bonding behaviors. Then Queen Seriel took the stand. She entered with her full royal bearing, and everyone in the room stood until she was seated. Her glow was controlled, formal, giving nothing away. "Your Majesty," Judge Han said respectfully, "you requested permission to testify?" "I did," the Queen replied. Her voice was clear and strong. "I have heard the accusations against Park Ji-won. I have listened to theories about manipulation and schemes, and I am here to tell you that you are all fools." A shocked silence fell over the room. "Your Majesty," the Velcrin prosecutor began. "With respect, no." The Queen cut him off. "I have respected this process. Now you will respect truth. My daughters did not escape. They were not lured. They sought out safety and comfort in their grief, and they found it. In the most unexpected place, yes. In a human, yes. But that does not make it false." She turned to look directly at Ji-won. "Park Ji-won has shown my daughters nothing but kindness. He has been patient when they were demanding, gentle when they were restless. He has taught them, played with them, and yes, allowed them to sleep peacefully for the first time since their father died. If that is a crime, then punish me as well, for I am grateful for it." "But Your Majesty," the human prosecutor said carefully, "isn't it possible you were influenced by your own grief, that you wanted to believe?" "Do not dare," the Queen said, her glow flashing dangerously, "to suggest I do not know my own children. I have watched them grow from the moment they emerged. I know their every expression, every sound they make, and I tell you with complete certainty that they were happier with Park Ji-won than they have been in months, not because of drugs or technology or manipulation, because of simple, genuine care." Ambassador Kang stood. "If I may, I have evidence that supports Her Majesty's testimony." He approached the judges with a data drive. "This contains security footage from the past 3 weeks, compiled and analyzed. It shows patterns that prove manipulation was impossible." The footage played on large screens. It showed Ji-won's movements throughout each day, all recorded by station security. His routine was simple and consistent. Work in the hydroponics bay, eat in his quarters, sleep, no secret meetings, no suspicious activity. Just a man going about his job with 2 alien children following him. Then Lieutenant Subin took the stand. Your Honors, during my investigation into the source of the accusations, I discovered irregularities. Anonymous messages sent from multiple accounts, coordinated timing of complaints. It showed signs of organization. Are you suggesting, Judge Han asked, that someone orchestrated this investigation deliberately? I am saying there were people who wanted Park Ji-won separated from the princesses, and they were willing to manufacture a crisis to achieve it. The Velkrin judicial elder spoke for the first time. Do you have evidence of who these people were? Subin hesitated. I have suspicions, but concrete evidence has been difficult to obtain. Whoever did this was careful. A commotion at the back of the room drew everyone's attention. Belshar, the elderly Velkrin advisor, entered supporting a human woman. Commander An Ji-soo. She looked terrible, her face drawn, her eyes red. Forgive the interruption, Velshar said, but this human came to me this morning with a confession. I believe the tribunal needs to hear it. Judge Han nodded. Approach. Ji-soo stepped forward slowly. She wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. I orchestrated the accusations, she said quietly. I worked with War Master Krathson. We wanted to stop the peace talks. We thought separating the human from the princesses would create enough doubt and anger to derail negotiations. The room erupted, both sides shouting. Judge Han hammered for order. Why are you confessing? The Velkrin prosecutor demanded. Ji-soo finally looked up and there were tears on her face. Because I heard them. The princesses. They haven't stopped crying since they were taken from him. I passed by the royal suite last night and I heard them through the doors, these sounds of pure grief. And I realized what I had done. I hurt children to serve my own bitterness. She turned to face Ji-won. I'm sorry. I told myself I was protecting humanity, but I was just punishing everyone for my own losses. You did nothing wrong. Krathson was brought in next, having been detained based on Ji-soo's confession. He was defiant at first, but when shown the evidence of their conspiracy, his defense crumbled. He too admitted to their scheme. Judge Han looked at both of them with disgust. You have brought shame to both your peoples. You will face justice for your actions. She turned to Ji-won. Park Ji-won, this tribunal finds no evidence of wrongdoing on your part. The accusations were false, manufactured by those who sought to use you as a pawn in their opposition to peace. You are cleared of all charges. Relief flooded through Ji-won. So intense he felt dizzy. Furthermore, Judge Han continued, I am ordering the immediate reunification of Park Ji-won with the princesses Hana and Mirai. If Her Majesty agrees. I agree, Queen Sariel said immediately. And I add my own order. Park Ji-won is hereby appointed as official guardian to my daughters, with all rights and protections that title carries. Anyone who interferes with him or harms him will answer to me personally. The room erupted again, this time with arguments about protocol and tradition. But Ji-won barely heard it. He was going back. The guards escorted Ji-won from the tribunal chamber directly to the royal suite. His heart pounded with each step, a mix of nervousness and anticipation. He had been separated from Hana and Mirai for 3 days, and according to everyone who had told him, they had not been well. The doors to the royal suite opened, and Ji-won heard them immediately. Not the peaceful purring he had grown accustomed to, but distressed chirping, crying. The sound broke his heart. Queen Sariel stood in the center of the main room looking exhausted. Around her, Velkrin caretakers tried to comfort 2 small, dimly glowing forms. Hana and Mirai huddled together on a cushion, their lights flickering weakly. They looked smaller than Ji-won remembered, as if grief had physically diminished them. They will not eat, the queen said quietly. They barely sleep, and when they do sleep, they wake screaming. My physicians can find nothing physically wrong. It is their hearts that are wounded, may I? Ji-won asked, already moving forward. The queen gestured permission. Ji-won approached the cushion slowly and knelt beside it. Hana, Mirai, it's me, I'm here. Both princesses' heads lifted. Their eyes, which had been dull and colorless, suddenly brightened. They saw him, and the change was instant and miraculous. Their glow surged from dim to radiant. The distressed chirping transformed into joyful chiming. They launched themselves at him, and Ji-won caught them both, pulling them close to his chest. They pressed against him desperately, their small hands clutching his shirt as if afraid he might disappear again. The purring started immediately, loud and intense, vibrating through his whole body. I'm sorry, Ji-won whispered, tears stinging his eyes. I'm so sorry I left you. I didn't want to. I'll never leave you again. Mirai made a sound that was almost like a sob. Hana tucked her head under his chin right over his heart. They held on to him with a strength that surprised him, as if they could keep him there through sheer determination. Queen Sariel watched with tears glowing in her crystalline eyes. They understand now, she said softly. They understand that sometimes people we love are taken from us. They learned that fear too young. I won't let it happen again, Jiwan promised. Your Majesty, if you still want me to care for them, I'll do everything I can to keep them safe and happy. I do not just want it, the Queen said. I need it. They need it. She moved closer and placed a hand on Jiwan's shoulder. You have given me a gift I can never repay. You gave me back my daughter's joy. In my culture, that creates a bond deeper than law, deeper than politics. You are family now, Park Jiwan. For better or worse, for all time. Over the following weeks, life on Threshold Station transformed. The successful resolution of the conspiracy, with members of both species working together to uncover the truth, proved to everyone that cooperation was possible. The peace talks accelerated, with both sides newly motivated to succeed. Commander Anjisu and War Master Krathzen faced justice in a joint tribunal. Interestingly, their trial became a symbol of shared values between humans and Velkrin. Both species agreed on the punishment for those who would harm children and manipulate peace for personal agendas. They were stripped of rank and sentenced to community service, working together on border stations to promote understanding between their peoples. Jiwan's role expanded beyond just caring for the princesses. Queen Sariel proposed a cultural exchange program based on the heart warmth phenomenon. Scientists discovered that about 30% of humans produced the frequency naturally, though Jiwan's irregular heartbeat made him exceptional. The Velkrin began requesting human caretakers and teachers for their young, while humans became fascinated with Velkrin art and philosophy. Dr. Yoon Dahi partnered with Velshar to study interspecies bonding. Their research showed that heart warmth was just one of many biological compatibilities between humans and Velkrin. They published papers that became foundational texts for the emerging field of interspecies relations. Lieutenant Choi Subin and Talus, who had worked closely during the investigation, developed a friendship that turned into something deeper. They became the first human Velkrin couple, their relationship closely watched by both species as another symbol of possibility. Lee Hyejin's documentation of Jiwan and the princesses became required viewing in diplomatic training programs. Watching a simple farmer care for alien children with patience and love proved more powerful than any treaty language. But for Jiwan himself, the politics and symbolism faded into background noise. His world remained focused on Hana and Mirai, who grew a little each day. They were learning human words now, mixing them with Velkrin sounds to create their own hybrid language. They had learned to say Jiwan, and used it constantly, calling for him whenever he was out of sight. 6 months after the tribunal, Queen Sariel made an announcement that shocked both species. She was offering Jiwan the position of first human liaison to the Velkrin homeworld. He would live in the royal palace, continuing to help raise Hana and Mirai while also serving as a bridge between their peoples. Jiwan stood in his quarters, now much larger than the small room he had first occupied, looking out at the stars. Ambassador Kang had come to discuss the offer. It's an incredible opportunity, Kang said. You would be making history. I never wanted to make history, Jiwan replied. I just wanted to grow plants. You can still do that. The Queen is building you a greenhouse on the homeworld. She said her daughters should continue learning about earth plants. Jiwan smiled at that. Hana and Mirai had become enthusiastic gardeners, each claiming their own section of the hydroponics bay. They fought sometimes over whose tomatoes were better. What about my family on Earth? Jiwan asked. My mother? Video communication will be available. And you can visit. The Queen has promised transport whenever you need it. Kang paused. But Jiwan, you need to understand what you'd be agreeing to. Hana and Mirai have imprinted on you. In Velkrin culture, that's permanent. They will need you in some capacity for the rest of their lives. Even when they're grown, even when they have their own children, you'll still be their guardian figure. I know, Jiwan said. He had learned about Velkrin development from Velshar. The princesses would be young for another 15 Earth years. Then they would mature rapidly. But the bond formed in childhood lasted forever. Can you accept that responsibility? Kang asked gently. It means your life will never be simple again. You'll always be connected to the Velcrin royal family, always in the public eye. Ji-won thought about it. He thought about his quiet farm, his simple life. Then he thought about two small glowing faces lighting up when they saw him, about the sounds of contentment they made when they fell asleep on his chest, about teaching them to be gentle with seedlings and watching their wonder when flowers bloomed. It's not really a choice, he said finally. Is it? They need me. And honestly, I need them too. I didn't know my life was incomplete until they stumbled into it. Then you'll accept? Yes, I'll go to the homeworld. I'll be their guardian, their friend, whatever they need. That night, Ji-won told Hana and Mirai about the decision. They didn't fully understand yet, but they understood enough. They would be going home and Ji-won would be coming with them. Home, Mirai said carefully, testing the human word. Yes, Ji-won confirmed. Your home, and my home too now. Together? Hana asked, pressing against his chest to feel his heartbeat. Together, Ji-won promised. The day of departure arrived with ceremony and celebration. Both human and Velcrin officials gathered to see them off. Ji-won's few possessions had been packed. His plants had been carefully transferred to containers for the journey. His mother appeared on a video screen transmitted from Earth. She looked proud and worried at the same time. My son, the bridge between worlds, she said, laughing through tears. Your father would be so proud. I'll visit as soon as I can, Ji-won promised. I know, but right now those children need you more than I do. Go. Be the father they need. The words hit Ji-won hard. Father. He had not thought of himself that way, but looking at Hana and Mirai clinging to his hands, maybe that's what he had become. Not by birth, not by species, but by choice and love. Queen Seriel's ship was magnificent up close. Larger than any human vessel, it glowed with inner light like all Velcrin technology. Ji-won walked up the boarding ramp with a princess on each side. They were excited, their glows bright and cheerful. For them, this was an adventure. At the top of the ramp, Ji-won paused and looked back at Threshold Station. He could see humans and Velcrin standing together, watching, waving. 6 months ago, that would have been impossible. The two species barely trusted each other enough to occupy the same space. Now they stood side by side, united in hope for the future. Are you ready? Queen Seriel asked. She stood at the entrance to the ship, magnificent in her formal robes. Ji-won looked down at Hana and Mirai. They looked up at him with complete trust. Their hand squeezed his. Yes, he said. I'm ready. The ship's entrance closed behind them. Through the windows, Ji-won watched as Threshold Station grew smaller, then disappeared into the starfield. They were heading to the Velcrin homeworld, to a life he could never have imagined when he was a simple farmer on Earth. Hana tugged on his sleeve. Story?
She